Hello everyone, Lawrence Fleming here again. Well, it rained a little bit last night, which is good because all the green stuff around here needs it, but everything's a little wet. I hope when I stand up my pants aren't wet in the back, but that's the way it goes. I didn't bring a towel. Anyhow, we have to deal with whatever we deal with every day. But if you deal with it with a smile, it seems like it goes away quickly. Satan always tries to get to us. But you deal with it. You shrug it off. You tell him to get away from you, leave you alone. They're out touring around in their little four-wheelers that check on everybody in the morning. We have another family in here that needs prayer. We get these every once in a while. They're apparently homeless. There's a bunch of them. They've got 2 campsites because you're only allowed 6 people in a campsite, and they must have more than that. Somebody dropped them off. We're going to see a lot more of that as people find themselves evicted or out of their sites. Here comes another four-wheeler. That's our camp host. Where are they? There they are. What they do is they check the board and see how many people have cards up that say they're registered. And then they take down old cards or put up new ones if they need to. And if there's somebody at a campsite and they're not supposed to, they make sure they either pay or get out, one or the other. Now the camp hosts, they're just a trailer family that are there to stay, and they get to stay for free for being the camp host. And they clean, up around here. They clean the bathrooms, things like that. So they're not they're not just here to watch. But they don't have to enforce the rules. They just tell the people, and then if they don't, then they go get a ranger. And the rangers have the authority of police, so they can do whatever they need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get on with this. We've got still more stuff going on around. Israel is still attacking Iran and Syria. I'm afraid they're probably about as effective as our anti-drug enforcement here in the United States. They catch obvious problems, but like with our drugs, they only get like 1% of what comes in. The rest of it, they find ways to get in. And they have it already calculated into their cost of losing so many, shipments a year. When they do the same thing over there, Iran ships missile parts and everything else over there to build up so that they're ready for a war. Syria better be careful though, because they're pissing off Turkey. Because their people in Syria are out burning Turkish flags. It's making them a little bit angry there, and they might get into the fight. All these countries, though, pretty much are not capable of going to war. China, where they're continuing this big chest-out puffiness of going against Taiwan, they're spending their last dollars. There's sanctions on them. We have been still buying goods, but we just passed funding bills that will put more money into tech here that will take it right out of the mouths of China. So they're going to have to do something out of desperation. We're right on the verge. Okay, well, we're looking at the seals now, and to remind you, John is not telling us a timeline from beginning to end all the way through the Bible. He's staying focused. We're reading about seals, so he's going to cover the seals all the way through the tribulation time frame. Okay, they're going to start before the abomination of desolation and continue after that. And then we're going to go do the trumpets, and they're going to start and go all the way through the tribulation with them. And then we're going to get the bowls of wrath, which are really the worst of the worst. What you're going to see today is that it's not good. We already read the last seal, the third seal, taking security from the earth. The red seal was granted the one that sit on it to take peace from the earth. That's the second seal. The third seal, I guess the third seal are the scales, the black horse, where everything is going to cost too much. Well, we're not there yet. We're close, but we're not there yet, which means we're not this far into the Bible. The first seal is the Antichrist. We haven't seen him that we're aware. He has to be alive, because he's going to have to be an adult when he's ready to do this. He's not going to come out as a baby and suck on his bottle and tell us to worship him. But he is going to be an adult when it actually starts, so he's got to be out there. And if you remember with Hitler, he was not, he was nothing. Nobody knew who he was. He didn't speak that well. Nobody really cared about him until the power of Satan came into him. And then he was the best orator out there, the best ideas. Everybody thought he was God, if you will. They were in a depression in Germany, and he got them out of it. But he got them into a war. That in itself would have been tolerable if they didn't know what he was doing with some of the people. Death camps. That is 100% Satan. You don't have to think about that twice. Getting rid of the Jews. They're going to try that again. And Satan's going to try to come down here with a third of his angels to take us out. But God's going to be smarter than him because he already knows what's going to happen. Satan's not omnipresent. He won't know what's going on until he gets down here. Now, he knows the story, and he's hoping he can get in fast enough to get to us. But that's why we're snatched away. Again, I like to pick fun of Satan because he's very stupid. We already have the entire book telling him exactly what's going to happen, and he won't stop being a jerk. So I jokingly say he's going to be playing the role of Charlie Brown in the football, and Lucy's going to pull the football away just before he kicks it. He's going to fall flat on his back. It happens over and over again throughout history. Satan tries something. The only time Satan so far, there's basically two times that I will give you a reference to that you will recognize. Adam and Eve, he obviously messed them up. Created this whole world for us that we're living in with our sinful bodies. That was a score. That was a plus. But God's making lemonade out of these lemons, okay? And Jesus is basically the sweetener, okay? So we're in good shape. We're going to be in good shape. Even in spite of all these things that I'm reading now, we're going to be in good shape. And the other time that Satan actually won was when he got down here and his angels mated with humans, and that basically led to the flood, where God had to wipe everybody out. And Sodom and Gomorrah would be, other stories that you're familiar with where you see the wrath of God. It's all because of what Satan has done. And we saw where the churches, the letters to the churches, that area that I put the map up for, and if you don't see it, go back and look through the common stuff, the pictures. I wish I could include them in these videos, but my video editor is limited. It's a really good video editor and one that I'm familiar with how to use. I hate to go learn another one because I really need to be doing this on a laptop. I need to be using my GoPro and using a laptop, so I'm working on that. But I have to hold on to my money because I don't know what's going to come up soon, so I can't put my money into it. I have to do the fundraiser. Now the fundraiser did get me a new microphone, which I needed, and a couple of other things that I needed tech-wise. But I'm not raising enough for the laptop, so I'm using it. Thank you very much for helping, but I got to figure out something else. We're all going to be hurting here shortly, money-wise. So I really hate to ask for it. So I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. It works. And if I'm going to do something topical, I'll put a picture up that will be topical. Okay, getting back to the map. That area was part of the Roman Empire and really almost had as much going on as Rome. The buildings, the amphitheaters, all the stuff that they had in this area were comparable to what they had in Rome, including their naked baths and their orgy buildings and things like that. And right in the midst of all that, 7 churches get planted. Ephesus is first, and then they plant the other ones. So the temptation is all around them. And that's why these letters were written to them. That's why we have the Ephesus, and Galatians, Corinthians. These are all in that area towards Rome. But in that Roman Empire is where all these churches were started. These are Gentile churches. The church in Jerusalem was the synagogue. James was in charge of that. But most of what we're seeing in the New Testament are letters to Christians. Okay, so we're going to get back into this. This was Revelation. We're reading about the seals written by John. This is John's vision. He's already had the privilege, the only one in the Bible, to see Jesus in person in heaven. He's the only one, so he's getting some special stuff. So we really need to pay attention. All right. We've got, I guess we're doing the 4th seal now. It's in verse 7. I don't know if I did that yesterday or not. I don't think I did, but in any case, we're going to overlap like I like to do anyway. When he opened the 4th seal, that's chapter 6, verse 7. When he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature saying, "Come and see." Common. You can almost skip that. It's every seal. Look and behold a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed him. And he was given the power over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword and hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth. The beasts of the earth can kill too. We haven't really seen that in the past. We've seen individuals get attacked by bears, but enough to where they're going to mention it in the Bible for posterity that beasts are going to kill people. Satan is the ruler of this world. He can control anybody and everybody down here that isn't protected by Christ. We're going to eventually be able to talk to the animals, pet them. They won't be carnivorous towards us anymore. But that's not until Jesus gets back and we get rid of Satan. Okay, the 5th seal. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar of souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried out with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth?" It's getting noisy again here. I didn't plug my microphone in because it was real quiet when I sat down. I'll try to speak louder just to make sure you can hear me. All right. Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer. It's not quite over. This is only the 5th seal. We got 2 more seals, and we're covering the entire timeline. Okay. Until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed. So there's more martyrs to come. So those that are crying out that have been martyred or killed for their following of Jesus, they've got more to come at the 5th seal. Wait a little longer. The 6th seal, and I looked, and he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth and hair, and the moon became like blood. This is a familiar description of this particular time on the timeline. You can see this in a number of different places. Matthew talks about this. Okay, so we know where we are on the timeline. We're getting close to the end. Okay, we're not here for this, for any of these seals. But there will be some that were sitting on the fence that missed the boat. And they're going to see all this stuff. They're going to see us disappear. They're going to be explaining that aliens abducted us or something. Or there was another experiment by China released. Whatever it's going to be, it doesn't matter. They're going to tell the people remaining, and they're going to have no choice basically but to believe it if they have no foundation. Get those seeds planted. Okay. Okay, it became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Well, fig tree was known there, but you can pick anything. I live in the south. When we get to a point where the leaves are falling, they're turning orange and yellow, and it's beautiful, and we love to see that. And the winds come and shake them, and they start losing them. But that instance where they've changed and they haven't fallen yet, it's the most beautiful part of the country to see at this time, full of color. Fig tree, they're not as beautiful as our trees here, but it's one that they'd be very familiar with. Okay. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it was rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Every mountain was moved out of its place. You're not going to be able to stand up. I don't know how many of you have ever been in an earthquake. I have. And my family has. We came from Southern California, and I moved here about 30 years ago to Georgia. But we've had some earthquakes out there that were big. The Silmar quake was one of the big ones. If you've ever seen the movie Earthquake, it's kind of about that. There was a dam that started to get cracks in it. It didn't break, fortunately, because it would have wiped out people in the valley. But you can't stand up. You're going back and forth, When I do my Star Trek stuff, and sometimes when we're being shot at, we have to do the back and forth as we're supposedly rocking back and forth being shot at. Well, that's make-believe. And when we're all done, we're stopped. But there's nothing more terrifying than being in an earthquake when there's nothing you can do. You just got to ride it out and hope that you're in a safe place. I was driving into work one time, and I was in my little Toyota pickup. I had a four-wheel drive Toyota at that time. I used to go down to Baja, Mexico, and that all the time. But I'm sitting at a stoplight, going to work in the morning, and it starts to shake a little bit. And looking at my tax stable. I mean, if your engine's fluttering, it's going to go up and down. There's nothing wrong. I'm looking around. Then I looked outside and saw the traffic lights that were swinging back and forth. We had a small earthquake. It was probably a 4-something. Of course, I get to work and they won't let us in. They have to go through and inspect the building. So it took them about an hour. But that's kind of what Southern California has to look forward to. And I'm so glad that my son is out of San Francisco because, one, it's a cesspool, literally. But the San Andreas Fault, the biggest fault in the West Coast, goes right through the middle of the San Francisco Bay. So if that one ever cuts loose, it's going to level half of San Francisco. The 1906 quake. At that time, almost totally destroyed San Francisco because everything pretty much was wood frame, and it broke all the fire lines. There was no fire hydrants that you could hook up to that had water because it broke them all. It moved that much. The last one that happened was during the 80s. I think I was down in LA during that time because I had lived up that way. I lived in Hayward and San Leandro, and I used to travel across the bridge that collapsed when I went into San Francisco. And I was working in Silicon Valley, some of it at Stanford and some of it down in the valley part. So I'm very familiar with that. That earthquake shook, and it basically, all the property that they built in San Francisco, that was fill dirt. Dirt that's been brought in and put where the water is will liquefy when it shakes. And because of that, all the buildings started collapsing. All the fires and everything. They were in the coastal areas on the bay side. So I know a lot of those areas because I've lived in San Francisco too, back when it was pretty, back before the Democrats destroyed California. The Democrats are working for Satan. Don't condemn them. Pray for them. Because they're all going to hell if you don't pray for them. You pray for them, you can save them. Don't forget Paul. He killed Christians. He was standing there when Stephen was killed. Jesus grabbed a hold of him and blinded him and got his attention because he was honest in what he was trying to do. He thought he was doing the right thing. And God turned that to the correct direction because it was not the correct direction. But there's someone who was killing Christians and God used him. So even though we have leaders like our fearless leader up in D.C. and those that are out in California, there's hope for them. Pray for them. Don't pray that they can continue to do what they're doing. Pray that God will reach them and they will stop doing what they're doing. Pray for your enemies. We want to be in the right position with God on the way out. And we don't have much time. The way I'm looking at these seals here, we're real close to the famine seal. Real close. That could happen, I think we're not going to be here, but that could happen no later than next year. The money problem is going to happen no later than next year. We're going to go digital money so that the Antichrist can use it. We're going to be going digital next year. We're going to collapse this government and people are going to lose everything. If you're paying for a home, you're going to lose it. They don't want you to own anything. That's part of the 30-20 reverse agenda. They want us to be without any property of any kind. They don't want you to own a car or a house or anything and be happy. Of course, they're going to tell you that you're happy. Their propaganda engine's going to kick into full gear. And the only thing they've got on their radar that they're worried about is the next 2 Novembers. And if we get attacked in a war, both of those Novembers are off. That will be the excuse they need. We get another big C of some sort. I gotta be careful I say any of these words that might show up on filters. And somebody could report me as well, and I gotta be careful about that. So help me to work through this. I'm not gonna spell it out completely. You guys are smart. You gotta know what I'm talking about. Okay. So the mountains and the islands will be moved out of place, and the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves of the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne. By this time they know what's going on. But they're asking for the rocks to protect them. They're not asking for God to protect them. They still won't give in. For the great day of wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Okay. Because of all this, we're going to be We're still doing the seals. And we've got, speaking of seals, we're going to jump into, the Navy has SEALs. That's their elite force. Well, Israel's going to have their SEALs too. That's their elite force. It's their 144,000, and they're going to spread the gospel, the Jewish gospel to Jews. So we're going to read about that in chapter 7. How are we doing on time? I'm almost out of time. I'm going to get started. I was hoping to get all the way through this let me see if I can get through chapter 7. After these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. And then I saw the angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth and the sea and the trees, until we have sealed the servants of God on their forehead. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. I get distracted easily. Cars drive through. And so you can see who these are. Of the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Gad, 12,000 were sealed. And all the way down, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. 12 tribes, 12,000. These are symbolic numbers, so there's probably more. Okay, and after these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, of all the nations, tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes. They're in heaven. They're before the Lamb. They've earned those white robes. With palm branches in their hands, and crying out to the Lord, a voice saying, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. All the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the 4 living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom, thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen. Then one of the elders answered me, saying, who are these arrayed in white robes, and where did they come from? And I said to him, sir, you know. So he said to me, these are the ones who come out of the great tribulation. The great tribulation starts right after the abomination of desolation, and it runs until the end. That's what I'm saying. These seals cover from the time that everything starts to fall apart on earth, the Antichrist arriving and everything else, to the very end, where we're recognizing those that were killed during that time frame. So this is the entire time frame. And then we're going to get to the trumpets, where they go back, and then that gets overlaid over the top. And then the bowls get overlaid over the second half. He's dealing with one thing at a time. It is not a linear progression. Okay? These are the ones that come out of the great tribulation and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will dwell among them. Jesus will eventually come down with them. And they shall neither hunger no more, nor thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any heat. For the Lamb who sits in the midst of the throne will shepherd them and lead them to living fountains of water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Okay, how we doing? I'm going over again. Let me try to get this next one in here. I'm just going to read this next verse, chapter 8, verse 1. When he opened the 7th seal, there was a silence in heaven for about a half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them was given 7 trumpets. Then another angel having a golden censer came out and stood at the altar. He was giving much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of the saints upon the golden altar. which were before the throne. Remember, the other angel was holding incense. That was the prayers of the saints. Okay, so these prayers are going to be here. I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of this, and then I'm going to continue on here when we come back. But the first trumpet is they're going to destroy vegetation. Okay. Then the seas are struck. Then the waters are struck. The heavens are struck. Then the bottomless pit is opened and the locusts come out. These are bad. The seals were bad. The trumpets are worse. The bowls are worse. So he's explaining these things as they overlay. So it's easy to see why there's not going to be very many people left on the earth when all this is over. A quarter killed with the seals, and we're going to have half of what's left killed. We know that there's going to be a bunch of people in Israel killed. The remnant is going to be what's going to flee. Israel's going to still exist because God's going to deal with them, but they're going to pay a price. Most Jews that live in Israel today are only Jews by blood, by DNA. They're there for one reason. They're being persecuted around the world, and this is their only haven. That's why they're there. They could care less about God. They're very conscious of their heritage, and they're looking and waiting for their Messiah to come and save them. They don't believe Jesus was. I was going to a synagogue when I became a Christian. And as soon as I mentioned that, they kicked me out. They don't like Jesus because all the rules that were set up when the temple was destroyed, they had rules before that. They were following the Mosaic law. They were following their scriptures that were added to it. Not supposed to add to the Bible, but they did. The Talmud and the Mishnah are what the rabbis would write over the years, explaining what their interpretation of that particular Bible verse was. They were following all that. And when the temple was destroyed, they couldn't follow the Mosaic law. They didn't have the ark. Jesus wasn't there. And when it was destroyed and the curtain was torn, symbolically, God is split from the Jews. Now, they're going to get their temple back. It's going to be an attempt to reunite them spiritually. You have to believe in God and a temple and for forgiveness to be able to use the temple. So it's an attempt to give them kind of what they want. God always gives us what we want unless it's going to kill us. If we're very adamant about it and we pray about it and we pray about it, even if it's not good for us, He wants to please us. They have no idea why they need the temple. And they have no idea that God has already given us the temple. I'm a temple. You're a temple if you're a believer. So we don't need a physical temple. And more than likely, they're not going to build the full temple. They're probably going to have a treaty that allows them to have full access to the Temple Mount, and they're going to build a tabernacle, throw up a tent. It's going to be more of a David temple initially. Now, their plans probably are to build the full temple, but they don't need it. The tabernacle will work. You're going to have the Feast of Tabernacles in the real tabernacle. And they've already got, I mentioned it before, they have a mobile sacrifice altar for burning sacrifices. They've already used it. All they got to do is to roll it up on the Temple Mount. And when they do, they can start their sacrifices with the temple, with their tabernacle, and they're back in business. Now, most of them are going to be trapped in the same phony religion, and I say this phony only because they've modified it, phony religion of the Jews. They're not going to pick up on Christ, most of them. But the 144,000 that we just read about are going to be out spreading their message. And they're sealed, which means that they've been given the Spirit. We're sealed. Satan can't attack us unless we just basically give him rights to do so. So if you're being attacked by Satan, get with God, get right with God, and tell Satan to go to hell. And he has to. Well, he doesn't have to go to hell, but he has to leave. Hell is temporary anyway. All those that come out of hell are going to go into the lake of fire. They're going to do the final judgment and then go into the lake of fire. Everything that was created, the bottomless pit, hell, and all this stuff, the lake of fire, were created at the beginning of time by God because he knew he was going to need them. But these bad places were not created for mankind. They were created for Satan and his group. And if you join them, if you take the mark of the beast, you're a member. You're a lifelong member of Satan's group. So when that comes up here shortly, be careful. I gotta fix my phone because I just noticed that I'm pushing down on the button. And if I'm not careful, that button will cause the phone to reset. All right, we're gonna come back in and pick up with the trumpets. And what you're gonna see is that we're gonna basically step back in time from the seals and then continue all the way through the end again with the trumpets. Then we're going to have the abomination of desolation, and we're going to go through the bowls. And we're going to be out of here because this is not linear. Don't think that Revelation 12 is after Revelation 8, because that means we'd have to go through the seals and the trumpets. It's not. It's not linear. He's dealing with one thing at a time. I don't know if that's just the way John does or if that's the way Jesus is. I suspect this is the way Jesus is. Very organized. So, the seals are coming first. That's why they're in the book first. Then the trumpets will overlay through the seals as they're happening. Some could happen at the same time. The bowls are going to be, that's the wrath of God. So that's the second half. The dog is over there yipping. I hope that doesn't get them in trouble. Like I said, that's our homeless people over there. And they're here because somebody probably came up with enough money for them to put them up here. I don't know how long they're going to be here. They can only stay 2 weeks at a time. Then they got to get out, go someplace else, and then come back for 2 more weeks. And this is the cheapest part in the area. There are other cheaper parts, but they're really more away from Atlanta. I haven't been able to get any work since last week because I'm too picky. I'm not going to work on shows that I don't believe in. And it's getting to where they're all where I don't believe in them. Now, I'd like to work on The Resident again. My last big feature was in The Resident. It's a medical program. Yeah, there's some soap opera type stuff, but it's a medical program. It's probably okay, kind of wholesome. They're not really doing a lot of bad stuff at all because they're doctors. But for Marvel, I'm done with Marvel. I'm a big Marvel fan. I'm sorry that I can't do it. I'm wearing my Tony Stark shirt. And I have the hair color now. I just don't have the style. I have to get it styled to do that, and I have to grow my beard back. But I'm not doing Dragon Con, which is coming up in a little while, in a few weeks. Dragon Con still requires you to wear your mask. I've been to 5 conventions since the last Dragon Con, and I didn't have to wear a mask. You don't wear a mask to a baseball stadium. You don't wear a mask in most public areas now. It may be the workers are still doing it because their bosses are telling them they have to. Pretty much everybody's been, can't say the word. So the chances are that if you have been and you get it, it's not going to affect you very much. Okay? So it's not a big deal. We don't need to be under the thumb of the health organizations. They're going to get their say. And if we don't go to war, they're going to drum up another need for masks and all the other stuff. Be ready. I'm hoping that it's coming up. This is August. I'm hoping it's September. If it's not this year for some reason, don't give up. I've always been trying to cover some of it. This would be the most logical point if you look at the way the timeline's lining up as far as where the seals are. This would be the most logical year, but it could go as far as next year. That's another year that you'd have to survive. I'm never going to give you a date. And you say, well, of course not, because we don't know the day or the hour. No, don't get that confused. Not knowing the day or the hour is the second coming. And that is a few years, maximum 7 years, minimum 3.5 from when everything starts. Okay? So that's not very far still. However, that's the second coming. There's nothing said about when the rapture happens, other than it's going to happen before all these things start happening. We're the restrainer, number one. We're not subject to wrath, number two. And we have the Revelation 12 sign in the Revelation 12 chapter talking about Satan casting his angels down to come after us. That's the rapture. And that's not very far away, because we can see how close we are to the seals. The seals can start this year or next. This year most likely, maybe next year. But everything is getting progressively, slowly worse. Keep prepping, just in case it's next year. I can't guarantee you it's this year. I'd love it to be this year. You would too. But I can't guarantee it. If we have to go another year, and you lose your job, you can't afford gas, whatever could happen. There could be no food on the shelves coming up. Be prepping just in case. And if you've got loved ones that are sitting on the fence, you want to leave them 2 legacies: Jesus and the ability to survive. Okay? And if you've got a job and you're working right now, now is the time to be prepping before you lose it. Now, I've got enough basic stores for me and my family, but I don't have enough to go a whole year, so I'm thinking that it's going to be fairly soon. God always takes care of me, because I trust Him, I believe in Him, I have faith in Him, and so should you. But He also gives us the ability to see and to do and to act. And I've tried prepping, and I just can't seem to get any further than the end of this year. Okay? I'm telling you that you need to be prepping. You ought to at least have enough to get to the end of this year. But it could be next month. I hope it is. All right. Be safe. Stay close to God. Tell people about God. If you can only save one more life, one more soul between now and when we're raptured, that is a big bonus, a big plus. Now again, you don't save the soul technically. You present God. You plant the seeds, and God nourishes them. The Spirit does the work. The Spirit is actually the Savior. The Spirit is the mind of Jesus, the mind of God. But you got to plant the seeds, because they're not listening to Him. You have to plant the seeds. Plant the seeds, and if they don't want to hear it, my nose is itching. There shouldn't be any pollen in the air because of our rain last night. All right, must be time to go. We're going to be meeting in the clouds shortly. Stay prepared. Keep your mind clean. Repent of anything that you're aware of. And then when you're done repenting for all the things that you're aware of, ask God to forgive you the things that you're not aware of. Cover all the bases. Be prepared. It was my scout motto for years, and it still applies. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.